Sarah from The Upcoming. A pleasure to have you here with us in wonderful Venice. Maybe you could kick off with a brief introduction to your film. What can audiences expect if they watch it?
Wow, that's a tough question. I hope they will remain in the story for the duration of the film. That's my most important. That's the thing I think is the most important with this. I don't know what they will get from it, and I don't know what they will understand and what they will be left with from the film. But I'm sure that if they have enough patience, they will find something for each of them.
And tell us a bit about the genesis of this project. Where did the initial idea come from, and what was the appeal of the story and the setting for you?
It was a few years ago, I think it was 2016, my DOP, we were talking about a lot of things, and he mentioned this radio broadcast, radio documentary he heard like a lot of years before, and it was about, but his memories were so vague, you know. He remembered only that there was something with a Romanian who attempted to cross the ocean hidden inside of a ship from Spain to America, and one Filipino that, I don't know, hid him inside of a dark metallic room because the Romanian had a Bible on him. And when I first heard the story, I said, oh, that's an interesting story, but it felt like, and the way he was telling me the story it felt like it was something very much connected to religion. And I really didn't want to do a film about that. I mean, I don't know what to say about that, and I'm not really into that subject. But the subject stuck with me, you know, and then after 1 year or two, I started thinking that maybe the story wasn't about religion, it was more about fear and miscommunication. I said, okay, this is the way I can get into the subject and make it my own. So I wrote it.
And I mean, quite an ambitious setting to have to make a film in. What was your starting point with that in terms of the production design and shooting the film, you know, on a boat? You know, how did you have to do the sets and everything?
I mean, it would be so much easier for me to say, wow, I wanted to make this ambitious project. But the truth is, when I write, I don't think about that. You know, it just has to be. It's always the story that's important, and the story can take place on board of a ship or a spaceship or just this sidewalk here. So I don't think about that in terms of setting when I write or when I think of a film. However, when we started really working on the production, we kind of encountered some things we never expected. Yes. Because my producer, when I first delivered the script to him, he read it, he liked it. He said, "Wow, this is like the perfect debut for him." It was also the debut for him as a producer. I said, "The script is great, and there's only one location, so everything will be done there." And 4 years later, we discovered that we will never be able to rent a ship that big to make a film, because they make so much money, you know, and no film crew in the world can pay them so much for 30 days of shooting. So we assembled the film from different locations. Some were in Romania, some were in Greece, some shots were even taken on the Atlantic coast of France. It's kind of like a puzzle that was connected by the end of the film. It was pretty rough production, I mean.
And of course, you've done lots of filmmaking before, short films, documentaries. This is your feature debut. What did you perhaps take from your experience of filmmaking previously, and what felt like a new challenge?
I took the mistakes. I love to make mistakes, and I think they're so important. I don't understand people when they say they're afraid of do this and do that. I tried to make short films and documentary the best way that I could, and the best way that I could sometimes involved a lot of mistakes. But those mistakes helped me a lot, and somehow helped me not just to make maybe a better film, but to be at peace with myself and allow myself to make mistakes and to go in deep waters without, without control. Um, yeah, that's that's what I think that's the thing that helped me the most to make this film. Just assuming your own mistakes.
And what was the casting process like? And did you perhaps feel any barrier, the fact being a Romanian director working with Asian actors, or was that quite a seamless process for you?
No, it was, on the contrary, it was amazing. When you don't know the language in which you direct, because, people speak in a totally different language from your own, you kind of tend to, ultimately, forget about things that you thought that were really important, like how does he say the word, what's the intonation, and you kind of, you're left with being really focused on face, gestures, emotion, the emotion that that person delivers to you without understanding a word he's saying, and you end up looking at face, mouth, gestures, which is actually cinema in itself, not words spoken, but images, The casting was pretty smooth, except for the Romanian part. That was, I think, Dumitru's character, Nico Becker, who plays him in the film. I think he was the hardest one to find because I wanted such a specific looking guy with a certain sense of physicality and a certain sense of being at ease with himself, living alone in darkness, So we really worked hard for that casting until we find Nico. The Filipino casting was actually watched, since we couldn't afford to do a proper casting in Manila. We didn't have enough money. I actually watched a lot of Lav Diaz films, which is a director I really admire, and his most recent films. And I found, after watching a lot of films, I found those three guys from the film. And what can I say? It all worked out. Then we had like a year talking on live calls and everything, talking about the script, getting to know each other. But they were casted directly from films. I said to myself, if they play like that for Love Diaz, so for the new coming director like me, it would be okay.
And maybe you can talk a little bit about the use of sound in the film, because it feels like, it's not just an add-on, but it's very much integral to how one of the key tools you're using in your cinematic toolbox.
Yeah, it was very important from the beginning. I mean, we in preparation for this film, we went prospecting, and we were on this really big ship like the one in the film for a week and a half, and as soon as that engine, the ship engine started, when we left, it was like a whole different world. It was millions of sounds. They were quite melodic in themselves, really industrial sounds, but melodic. And I always thought of this film as something in which music and sound design would play an important part. But then I met Nicolas Becker, the guy who did the sound design. And I still think to this day that our meeting was one of the most important things that professionally that ever happened to me, and personally actually. And he's so loose, so poetic somehow, and we talked a lot about it, and we came up with what's on the screen now.
And in terms of the themes that come out of your film, I thought it was interesting what you said there at the beginning, that sort of instinctively feeling it had something to do with God, but it was something that actually you kind of initially, pushed you away. So how do you think that plays out within your film, and perhaps ideas of good and evil and fear and religion? What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think they're expressed through the film?
Well, I'm interested in the idea of God, but only in the way they use it in the film. What attracted me most is there were two characters who didn't have a common language in which they could speak. So they could speak in some really broken languages, and they needed a third something, a third object, a third concept which can deliver, a real conversation. In this case was the Bible, God. in that way, I'm interested in the way in which we miscommunicate with each other using, I don't know, Bible, Qurans, whatever books written a thousand years ago. As for the moral concepts, I think, yeah, I don't try to think of the film as such as a film about good, evil, fair. It's just about some people who had to make decisions at a certain point. They don't understand each other and they have to relate through what they know, what they were taught, as growing up, and what they understand as empathy for every one of them, and that of course, concepts like this involve sooner or later things like good or bad, but they're not so important for me, or they were not so important for me.
And can you tell us what it means to you to have your film playing here in Venice?
Right,
and how do you see the role of film festivals like this as providing a platform for different kinds of cinema?
Well, listen, in Romania we have this huge problem, for example, that we have so few cinemas right now playing films, and in general, even those cinemas that are still open, they have maybe not the best projection conditions in the world. So to have your film played in Venice, that's for one, but in that hall in which was played yesterday in those conditions, it's amazing. You feel that you did something good, You did, and when you see people being emotional after that projection, it's great.
Especially after the couple of years we've had, where we haven't been able to appreciate that shared cinematic experience.
Yeah, it's a communal experience, yes, and it's amazing, actually. People together applauding, I miss that a lot.
And finally, can you tell us what you might be working on next? I've got a taste for feature filmmaking. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, I already wrote it, and it's different from this one. It's shot in Romania. It will be shot in Romanian language, and it's a coming of age film. It's about a small girl, 8 years old, who's an indirect witness to one of the most atrocious crimes in Romanian history. It's something that hasn't been solved to this day, and it's the aftermath of, let's say, this crime, or only through the eyes of a child. What she sees, what she understands, how she perceives the world around her.
All right, fantastic. Well, best of luck with that
Thank
project,
you.
but also for presenting this film
Thank
here
you.
in Venice.
Thank
Thanks
you
for your
very much.
time. Thank
Thank
you.
you.